And here we go with another episode of the Music Business Conversations podcast. I'm your host, John Mathis Jr. What are we talking about today? We're talking about Taylor Swift, but not really talking about Taylor Swift. She'll be the example today to give us some things to think about. There's a little insight regarding her career and a particular quote from her that we maybe can learn from. First, let me get this out of the way and say for 99% of us, Taylor Swift is not a measure or goal for success. What do I mean? She's one of those pop culture anomalies that happen once in a lifetime, so it is very out of the ordinary. Is there a chance that the average independent artist could be this successful? Sure. I'm saying there is a chance, but the odds are probably the same as buying a Powerball ticket and actually less. But sometimes if you're an artist, songwriter, or musician, and you do not live in Nashville, New York, Los Angeles, or maybe even Austin, Texas, places with more exposure to the workings of the music business industry and culture, the only thing you see in regard to successes are what reaches you in pop culture at the very top. The top 1% of pop culture is such extreme examples that involve so many additional factors. They aren't really realistic. They leave most with no idea where to start or what to do next to make some of the basic steps, much less how to get to the 1% level. I've lived in Nashville since my dad moved us here in the early 80s, and I've been around the music industry most of that time. So I've met many singers, songwriters, musicians, music business people who've made an independent living in music, most of whom you wouldn't even know their names. So my concept or vision for achieving some measure of success in the music business has had more realistic or practical examples. That is one reason I started this podcast, to talk about things in the music business that others that may give others a clear or more practical perspective on how to achieve some success, to offer practical goals. Speaking of moving to Nashville and ideas for achieving some success, I'm old enough to have been an elementary school kid in the mid-'70s. Before we moved from East Texas to Nashville. I remember going into the store and going to the music section back when most stores, even the dime stores, had a section of albums. Yes, the full vinyl albums, in the big square cases. Those sections were all categorized by genre. They had the dividers in place between genres, and in big letters, you knew what the section or genre was: country or pop or rock, all segregated by genre. And that was because we created a market of genres in the United States many decades before this, really designed to push sales and reach target audiences to funnel specific products to specific demographics. And we've been genrealized for a long time, ever since radio stations started music formats and charts created to determine what was popular in those formats or musical styles or genres. So if you're older than your mid-20s, you may still have the mindset of creating for genres. That may be your influence. Now back to Taylor Swift. I remember reading a Wall Street Journal interview with her in 2014 where she said, genres will matter less to people. And many of my friends in the music business couldn't necessarily see that statement as being true at the time, but I thought it was very insightful. Now, a decade later, we've seen this artist who said that, one that started in country music, the genre of country music, go out and live that statement and not be defined by genre and become her own brand or musical identity. And in the past 10 years, I've tried to encourage artists to push the edge of a genre, but not even think in terms of genres. Take your genre influences and allow yourself to be more creative. Whether you sing or write or play an instrument, don't base your brand or identity so much on genre. Consider how streaming platforms are approaching this in the modern music landscape. Streaming platforms have greatly lessened the importance of genres in modern-day music because genres have become less important. Streaming has allowed music to become more artist-focused and less genre-focused, and artists are creating less genre-specific music and creating just music. They're garnering a following based more on their musical identity and creation than a genre. In fact, when we go to make playlist pitches through a platform like Spotify for an upcoming release and start checking the boxes available, genre is not an option. One of the first options is to check the boxes that describe the mood of the release. Is it happy, sad, upbeat, romantic, chill, and a host of other options. Then up next is checking the boxes in regard to what instrumentation is on the recording: piano, drums, acoustic guitar, and again, a lot of other options. Spotify's considering recordings for various playlists more by mood and instrumentation than genre. I'm recommending exercising caution in creating records that sound exactly like the decade of music you were heavily influenced by. I still hear today where the same electric guitar tones can instantly be placed in a genre from the 90s, or final mixes sound like a certain decade of a certain genre. And those are a few examples that we still sometimes hear. Those types of genre copies limit success or are the way to broaden the reach. Now, there's still some slight exceptions. For example, if you're pursuing some type of radio airplay with what you do have to consider fitting the format a little bit. But radio has less impact for independent artists today, and you can still straddle the fence a little bit in your production. We all have musical influences in our DNA. We cannot get away from that totally, but with collaborations and outside direction, it's possible to give good musical, less genre-specific treatments to the musical products we're creating. My challenge to singers, songwriters, musicians, and others today when we sit down and have those music business conversations is to allow your influences to come through in what you do, allow that to create your identity, and don't let yourself fall into an imitation or exact duplicate of a past or even present genre. Yes, Taylor Swift is not my example for a goal in becoming an artist. She is the exception to the rule regarding huge, unbelievable success, but she is a good example of an artist growing up outside of Nashville with strong country roots who recognized that the rigid world of genres was going to matter less to audiences in the future. And we're seeing more artists appear to cross genres while the music, with their music, with non-genre specific music. One of those recent examples is the new country album by Post Malone. It had a lot of country music DNA, but wasn't your traditional sounding country genre. I think that genres will continue to matter less and less to music listeners, and for the rest of us, the focus on creating music by its mood and instrumentation is a good direction going forward. One final comment on genres. The real danger today in continuing to imitate or be a carbon copy of a genre or even its artists is comparison. If you sound exactly like the Eagles, AC/DC, Luke Bryan, Tim McGraw, Snoop Dogg, your favorite Christian artists, or even Taylor Swift, whatever you are most influenced by, you will instantly be compared to those examples of success. And when there is something the listener hears that sounds like someone else or exactly like a specific genre, it will be instantly compared to that. And there is no competing with comparison. Let me repeat that. If you've made it this far into this episode and only take one thing away, there is no competing with comparison. Avoid creating imitations or exact copies of artists or past genre products or even more current ones if you can. There is no competing with comparison. So the challenge and opportunity today is take what you do and allow listeners to judge it on its own. Avoid having what you do be an exact comparison of other artists and specifically genres. Think more in terms of musical mood and instrumentation that support the theme of a lyric. And that is something to think about for those of us who are independent. Thanks for joining me on the Music Business Conversations podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe or follow. And if you want to support this podcast, there are links for that as well.